US and India are in negotiations of a bilateral trade agreement. But yet, US has not shied away from imposing 12.5% of additional tariffs on India. The question should not be just why, the question should also be by now. What US wants and how for the longest time US is trying to change how tariffs have worked. US is trying to use tariffs to get things done, and this is reshaping the trade policy across the globe. Hello everyone, welcome to Vajiram and Ravi's Flash News. My name is Shubhangi Singh, and in today's session we are going to understand that what exactly made US put additional tariffs on India, what are the reasons, and we will also go back into the timeline that how tariffs have become a tool, a weapon at the hands to distort and change the trade policy we have seen. So let us begin with understanding that what exactly has happened. So USTR, that is US Trade Representative, has announced, and in this there is a proposal that there will be 12.5% of additional duties. Now, it is not just on India, this has been proposed for 54 countries, which includes India. Now, the reason USTR is given, USTR said that we launched an investigation and we found that these 54 countries, they have failed to prohibit the import of goods which are made or produced using forced labor. Apart from that, not just these duties have been proposed, another additional 10% for a different set of 6 economies have been produced, which are trying to prohibit the imports. They have certain policies, but they have limited enforcement, and that is why they will be facing 10% tariff. Now, as of now, this has just been proposed. Now, what we will see that hearing on this has been scheduled for later this year, and based on this, a final decision will come out. Now, when we are looking at this, we have to understand that this whole proposal at this point of time when the negotiations between India and US are ongoing matters a lot. This shows that US might want to put India on the table to discuss, but there are things that US will not consider. Second, we cannot forget how Iran war is unfolding and how it has changed the whole economic game across the world and across countries for everybody. And furthermost, we also have to understand this matters because this yet again proves that tariffs and their usage across the world has changed. Now, let us try to understand that when we are talking about the reason of the additional duties, let us try to understand more that what exactly is forced labor and why US has such problem with it, that they are using tariffs on this. So, when we are talking about forced labor, we have to understand that based on the proper definition ILO, and as the word also suggests, it refers to the work which is done, but it is done because of coercion, it is done because of force, threats, debt, or certain involuntary conditions. That means a person does not voluntarily want to do this work, but because of certain conditions such as debt or such as threats. Now, when we look at why forced labor is an issue to US, we have to look into the fact that this is a trade issue that US is portraying. So, US is saying that when we are talking about forced labor, it creates unfair competition across the global economy, especially in sectors such as textiles and apparels, cotton production, electronics manufacturing, agriculture, mining, and also seafood processing. That means they will lose on the edge. And that is why they are saying the American firms, they have higher labor compliance cost, which increases the cost of production in totality, and that is why imports coming from other countries which use forced labor, they have lesser cost of production, which gives them the edge. So, US is not in favor of that. The US wants that the countries which are importing the goods which come through forced labor, they should have additional duties so that they stand on a bar, equivalent bar in terms of prices with American firms. So, this is exactly what US's problem is here. Now, in this context, India has strongly rejected that on 2 notes. First, India has said we have bilateral conversations going on. A proposal of this intensity does not make sense when we are amidst the negotiation. Second, India has also denied the accusation in terms of forced labor. Now we will be moving ahead to talk about that how over the years, especially when we are putting US at the center, how the tariff around that they are imposing has evolved. So this tariff era began when President Donald Trump set the foot in White House for the first time. He got his presidentship in 2017, yes, but 2018 is when the tariff was started to begin to be used as an economic weapon. This was the first time that Chinese imports were hit by tariffs. The whole idea was to reduce trade deficit, to counter the IP theft and focus on US manufacturing. China retaliated with counter tariffs, but in this era from 2018 to 2020. Now, Donald President was in office from 2017 to January of 2021. In this duration, it was mainly US-China trade war. So this is how it was labeled. It affected steel and aluminium industry broadly across the globe because steel and aluminium tariffs were also placed, and one of the impacted countries was also India back then. Now, when the presidency changed and Joe Biden came in, it was expected that he would go against tariffs because that was his pitch, that was what he was campaigning against, but he silently continued the tariffs. The Trump era tariffs were retained, export controls were placed on semiconductors, advanced chips, AI technology, supercomputing equipment, and the whole picture, the narrative which Trump set on trade, that was changed, and that narrative was changed towards national security. But very quietly it was continued. Nobody made a hoo-ha about it, but it was about technological rivalry it was talked about. A very good example here is the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act of 2022. So when we are talking about the Xinjiang province, all the product links from there, they are known to involve forced labor, and the burden of proof, US said, is on the importers. If the importers can prove that they are not using forced labor, then we can accept. So that is where labor rights also gradually came into the picture as a trade instrument. Before this, it was only tariffs, now labor rights also. And now we come to the present era where we are clearly seeing that it is just about economic security. Tariffs will be used, labor rights will be talked about, national security will also be quoted so as to ensure only and only the interest of the country. And this is where we have seen that trade policy has become the strategic policy. They are not separate things anymore. So in this context, we have seen President Donald Trump stepped into the office, proposed retaliatory tariffs the minute he entered. He did not spare the partners, he did not spare the allies, and he said US comes first, America first policy. The key pillars here were economic security, labor protection, industrial policy, and geopolitical competition as well, because countering rival economic blocs was also an idea. If you remember, President Donald Trump said, if BRICS comes with their own currency, I am going to put tariffs. Similarly, you can just change the variables here. If they do this, I will put tariffs. If they are doing this, tariffs, 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 tariffs. And this is where trade policy immediately became the strategic policy. They are not listening to you, put tariffs. So in this very context, we have to understand that the additional duties that have been proposed, they are also nothing but a tool where we are seeing that labor rights is the setting the narrative, and the background is that this is the way they want countries to align to ensure that US comes first. Now in this context, now that we have understood the broader timeline here, let us also move to understand the impact on India. There will be direct sectors which will be impacted, which are export oriented towards US, textile, apparels, engineering goods, gems and jewelry, electronics, chemicals, and processed agricultural products. But India has been preparing very well for such things, especially since US has become dicey. US cannot be predicted. A very good example is the sea processed food, where this whole industry did not only found new export destinations, but also enhanced their diplomatic relations where the doors were shut down. For example, Australia for sea processed food, they have knocked those doors and opened them up for themselves. So this is where India still remains vulnerable, but hopefully in coming time we might be able to revive on this. But at the same time, we clearly see for the short term we will have a hit because reduced competitiveness will be seen in US market. Indian exporters will have to bear the higher cost, and there is no surety that even after doing this, the supply chains will remain destinated, because there will be increased scrutiny and the labor practices will be constantly questioned. So overall for India, it is a clear situation which is going to complicate the relationship that exists between India and US, and also the negotiations that are going on as of now. And this shows us that there is an emerging perspective on two sides. On one side, US is saying that we are protecting workers across the globe. We are creating a level playing field for everybody, and we are preventing the imports which are linked to exploitation. But what developing countries are feeling, that labor clauses may be disguised protectionism, that US is doing nothing but trying to protect its own economy and create hurdle for others. This additional compliance burdens the exporters, and rich countries have the leverage of using standards to restrict imports, but we have limited resources. So that is why in this very context, we clearly see that the protectionism that is being talked about, that is being linked not only just to direct tariffs, that is being linked to human rights, labor standards, sustainability, ESG compliance, national security concerns and more. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comment section. I'll be leaving you here now with a prelims practice question. This is the question for the day. Let me know the answer to this in the comment section. I have shown you the whole question. A lot of you requested that ma'am I should step aside so that you can see the question. So I have stepped aside. I hope you can see the question. Let me know the answer to this in the comment section. Thank you so much.